Be honest. You've been checking that account like it's going to tell you something about your soul. It won't. It can't. The divorce cut your net worth in half. And somewhere in there, you started believing it cut you in half too. It didn't. Today, we prove it.
Thanks for tuning in to Rooted in Christ. Men after divorce. Divorce rarely gets talked about in the church, but we open up the conversation for Christian men seeking healing, strength, and a renewed walk with God. Each episode, we focus on spiritual life, mental health, emotional recovery, physical wellness, financial stability, and your future. Stay rooted, rise strong. Divorce isn't you.
We spent 3 episodes naming the cost. The financial wake of moving on too fast, the money mental health cycle, the patterns that drain a man while everyone tells him he's doing great. Today, we turn the corner toward what's rebuilt. Welcome to Rooted in Christ, Men After Divorce. I'm Carlton with Reverend Jerome, and this is part 4 of The Cost of Moving On, Your Net Worth Crash, You Didn't. And I brought a brother who knows this road. David Samuel is the founder and principal of Everyday Finance Coach. A financial coach, yes, but also a divorced father who had to rebuild his money and his identity from the studs up. David, welcome.
Thank you, Carlton, and it's an honor. And I'll say up front, I'm not the guy who had it all figured out. I was really young, and I'm the guy who lost a lot, learned in public, and found out that restoration is real. So whatever you're carrying now, I'm talking to you as a brother who's carried it too.
Okay, let's start at the bottom. When the assets were finalized and the dust settled, a lot of men hit a staggering day zero. Their net worth cut in half or worse. David, what did your financial landscape look like in that exact moment? And what was the very first tactical move you made to stop the bleeding?
Well, yeah, my day zero was both a financial and an emotional shock. On paper, I had been pretty comfortable. But suddenly, roughly half of what we built was gone overnight. The home equity split, the retirement accounts divided, and now I was carrying a full set of household costs on one income instead of 2, and staring at significant child support payments. But you know, the panic tells you to do something dramatic. But my first move was not really dramatic at all. In fact, it was actually pretty strategic. I knew that before stressing about where I was going, I had to know where I was. So I built a big picture of my finances. I gathered up all the documents, the bank statements, the credit accounts, the tax returns, the court support orders, and I built a picture of my finances, all the accounts, income, debts, support obligations, and ongoing expenses. I saw it all in one place.
Look like?
Oh, I'm telling you, it was scary, but it was very clear. It was clarifying. In fact, after looking at all the expenses, I understood the difference between the essentials and the discretionary, and I froze the discretionary spending right away. You know, things like subscriptions, dining out, entertainment, any new life spending paused, not forever, just until I could see clearly.
A lot of times that's because there's nothing in your pocket anymore. You can't do anything.
That's right. That's right. But it was a very clear view, and that really helped me get grounded. Knowing where you are helps you get set up for trying to figure out, okay, where are we going?
Exactly.
Okay, so the first move was to stop the outflow before trying to grow anything.
Well, exactly. You know, you got to stop the bleeding before you build the muscle, right? then it's really important to begin separating and securing your financial life. You were together, right? And so this is an important next step, to begin to actually separate that. Now, I wasn't so diligent about this when I was going through it, but, you know, as we say, if I knew then what I know now, it might have been different, you know. But
Yeah, I know that.
yeah, but you gotta go through this. You gotta first you gotta close or freeze the joint accounts, right? Then you've gotta open up some new accounts, a new checking account, a new savings account. Importantly, you need to start building an emergency fund that you store in a high yield savings account, right? So It doesn't need to be, a zillion dollars, but, you think about it as maybe a month's worth of expenses. I use a lot of auto pays, right, in managing my finances. Well, you have to redirect some of those, right, because they got to be changed. You got to update your beneficiaries, on your insurance policies, your retirement accounts. You're separating. You're separating your financial picture. You got to look at your estate documents, your will, your trust, and really importantly, you got to protect your credit.
It's so important because, see, guys are going to fall into this. And unfortunately, we didn't have this to help us out. We had to, well, I don't know about y'all, but hit rock bottom. We had to scrape, the old saying, rob from Peter to pay Paul. And it took a while for me to understand what was going on and then start to put it together. If I had some brothers on an 8-track, on a CD, telling me this, it would have made my life so much better.
Well, it's important. You don't need to make one bold move, but you do need a couple of really true moves. And that's what makes a difference. Get the big picture view, right? Get the big picture, stop the bleeding, and then systematically start to separate and secure your financial picture. I mean, those are the things that day zero really matter.
Good word.
Okay. All right. Quick calls, brothers. If this is landing, do 3 things. First, like this episode. It's free, and it helps another brother find us. Second, subscribe so you never miss a part of this series. And third, the big one, tell another brother. Right now, there's a man in your phone treading water, pretending he's fine. Send him this. You might be the shore he forgot existed.
And come find your people. Everything we build here lives at rootedinchrist.org. Free community, free resources, weekly devotionals, and the tools we're walking through today. You don't rebuild alone. You don't need to rebuild alone. Not here.
Okay, like it, subscribe, send it to a brother, and meet us at rootedinchristmen.org. Now, let's get back to it. What are the most common hidden leaks that you find that most men who go through divorce are facing?
There's a ton of leaks. You're right. They start to leak your finances, leak your. I can think of 4 in particular that I think I'd share here. Leak 1: trying to maintain the old lifestyle on the new income. You get takeout every night because the house is too quiet to cook, right? Ride shares, last minute, everything, right? You can't do that. You can't maintain the old lifestyle on the new income. So that's one leak. Leak 2 is overusing credit cards, right? If you don't have resources and savings sufficient to do the things that need to happen, particularly as it relates to household duplication. New furniture, you got to get new kitchen appliances and stuff, another set of everything for the kids at your place, and, you can overextend on using credit cards for that stuff. Leak 3, this is a big one, and I'm sure, you've experienced this, guilt spending, trying to buy your kids affection because you're not there full time anymore. So you try to fill the gap with just spending. And then leak 4 that most people don't think about is, your tax status changes. Your filing status, your withholdings, who claims the kids. And if you don't adjust those, you get a nasty surprise. It feels pretty much like another loss. So those are 4 leaks that I can think of that are pretty devastating. Now, the other thing is that you've got to avoid making, big irreversible mistakes, right? For example, rushing into a legal or financial arrangement just to get it over with without really understanding the long-term consequences of those arrangements. That's a big mistake, and that can dig you into a really deep hole. Hiding money, skipping support payments, those things can really bite you in the ass, legally and financially. And so it's important to be aware of that and not do that. Rebounding into a new relationship and some major financial commitments before stabilizing your own situation. Like co-signing with stuff, moving in together, joint debts that you take on before you stabilize your own situation. That can be really problematic. You want to go slow on the big decisions. If it's a choice that you're going to feel over 10 to 20 years, you don't need to make this decision in 10 to 20 days. I mean, go slow on that stuff. And finally, recognize the emotional side of your finances. Anger, guilt, grief, loneliness, those things can drive impulsive spending and even revenge decisions, right? You want to avoid that. You want to engage healthy support systems for yourself. Maybe it's therapy. Maybe it's men's groups or trusted friends. Clear emotions make for better financial decisions. And so go slow and be aware of that stuff. Does that make sense?
Okay. What aggressive wealth building or investing strategies should we be taking, or should the brothers be taking?
Okay, so we want to turn from defense to offense here, right? Think about getting back on track. Well, let me be clear first. I'm sharing principles, not personalized advice. So anyone should run their specific plan past a qualified investment professional or a tax professional. But here's what I coach: aggressive savings and a relentless system for investment contribution. Those are the things that are key. When I say aggressive, I'm not talking about risky bets. I'm talking about aggressively saving. Speculation is how people lose the little money they have, and discipline is how we keep that on track. So I'd say step one, capture all the free money you can. For example, if there's a employer match on your 401k or retirement plan, you fund up to that match before you do anything else. That's like free money, right? It's an instant return that you can't get through other investments. That's pretty specific. Step two, attack high interest debt hard. Hit it hard. You got to get rid of that, because paying off a charge card that's a 23% interest rate, that's like a guaranteed return that most investments can't match. So you got to get that debt down. That's important. Credit cards can be deadly.
I know somebody who had an outrageous credit card interest rate, and they were only paying the minimum.
Yeah.
And when they realized what was going on, it was shocking, because they started out, I think it was like, 4,000 or 5,000, but it had ballooned up to $17,000.
If all you're going to do is pay the minimum, you're going to pay the maximum in interest for the longest period of time. So
Right.
you got to find ways to accelerate that and get rid of those. Now, once you've contributed to the 401k enough to get the company match, step three is you set up a Roth IRA brokerage account. Now,
Explain what that is.
yeah, so there are these tax advantaged, is what they're called, savings plans. The 401k is a tax advantage savings plan. For example, the contributions you make to that, you can write off. And so an IRA is similar to that. But the Roth IRA has a special feature such that when you begin withdrawing from that, the withdrawal you make, which includes the growth of the investment, is tax-free. So the Roth IRA is a very important instrument, and it's easy to set up. You can contribute up to $7,500 a year in a Roth IRA, and that builds. Now, it's easy to do online. You can use Fidelity or Schwab or Vanguard, any reputable brokerage, whichever one you're comfortable with. Then begin contributing to that account regularly. We want to keep the investments simple and low cost. For example, you want to invest in broad, diversified stock index funds. They've proven to perform really well, and they're very low cost. So they represent the entire market. So there's no need for you to pick stocks. Most stocks you would pick can't outperform that index anyway. And so it makes sense to invest in that index. Now, here's the key to making this work. You want to set up auto transfers from your checking account to contribute a fixed amount to that IRA every month. Let me repeat that. Every month, not every other month, not when you feel like it. And that's why you want to use auto transfers. it takes all of the guesswork and the willpower out of the equation. You don't even need to worry about it, right? It comes out
Take
of your
away from
paycheck.
you, so you can't even use it.
You can't even use it. It goes right into your Roth IRA. You're doing it every month. And regardless of where the market is, the market's going up, or the market's going down, you're just continuing to contribute to that asset. And it really makes a big difference. And then you want to look to increase the input side. You know, how can you generate some more income? Maybe it's a side hustle for a while. Maybe it's negotiating a raise at work. Maybe it's learning a new skill that can win you a promotion that will be more money. So you're trying to invest regularly, but you're also trying to increase the input side. And that's how you begin to generate this resource. Now, here's the part that many men miss. As a single man with a disciplined plan, every dollar is fully under your stewardship. You're not negotiating priorities with anybody, right? You're in charge. And that focus, pointed at a long-term horizon, that's like a superpower. You'd be amazed at the returns that begins to generate. You're not starting over. You're building with full authority over your own financial life. Aggressive doesn't mean risky, as I said, but it means high savings rate, low cost investment, and a system that you don't quit, that you continue month after month after month.
Okay.
That make sense?
Yep, that makes sense to me. Hey, okay, Rev, you want to drop a spiritual nugget in there for us?
Well, I will restore to you the years that the swarming locusts have eaten. That comes from Joel 2:25.
Hear that, brother? Not I'll help you survive the loss, restore. The years you think the divorce ate, the savings, the stability, the plan. God says those are not beyond his reach. I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten. And restoration in scripture is rarely a copy of what was lost. Often it's more.
Yeah, that's the gospel of it, right? He doesn't just patch the old house. He rebuilds on a deeper foundation because now it's built on him, not on a marriage or a number. The locust years aren't the end of your story. They're the soil that you're going to rebuild from.
You're going to grow out of it. All right, I like that.
Okay. This is real. Can you blow up your balance sheet and your identity at the same time?
Well, the idea of, your self-worth versus your net worth is an important thing to think about. And it is real. A divorce can do just that. It can blow up your balance sheet and your identity at the same time. Know that net worth and self-worth are two different scorecards. Your accounts may be down, your finances may be in a mess, but you're not in a mess. You got to remember that your net worth is a snapshot in time. It's just where you are right now. Self-worth, on the other hand, is a whole lot bigger. Your self-worth is your character, your values, how you treat people, how you show up as a father, the quality of your decisions. Instead of asking yourself, what am I worth now that half my stuff is gone? You need to be asking, who am I becoming now? You see, this is an identity question, not a bank balance question.
That's important because a lot of people, their net worth, their self-worth is tied up in their stuff. And they let their stuff blow themselves up higher than you should be. Then when something happens and your stuff is removed, and instead of coming to work in that Lexus or Mercedes, now you're in a Corolla. And now you feel deflated. Your self-worth to you isn't much. So if you don't feel you're worth much, nobody else is going to feel that you're worth much.
That's why I say you got to give yourself a new scorecard. You got to measure your wins differently. Did I show up for my kids? Did I keep my word on obligations I agreed to? Did I take one concrete step with my money, like tracking my spending or building an emergency fund or paying down a bit of debt? These are character wins, and character is what your self-worth is built on. So you rebuild your net worth and your self-worth in parallel, but separately. Your net worth is, as I say, building a realistic budget, an emergency fund, paying down debt. Your self-worth, you're investing where money can't reach, your health.
And I like how you said earlier, like try to save up at least a month's of expenses. Then after you get that month's expenses, increase it, because now, I mean, like they say, now we should have like 6 months for a real like nest egg.
Right.
And so it's going to take some discipline and it's going to take some time.
But stop measuring your self-worth based on what that balance is. The point. You got to look you got to look at the important things to measure your self-worth. Let your values and your behavior define your self-worth. Let your net worth be what it actually is. It's a long-term project that you're working on. It's not a verdict of your value as a man, and that's the key thing.
Old school people grew up with the saying, your word is your bond. So your worth is what you do when you show up, when you're supposed to show up, when you are there, when you're supposed to be there, when you do what you're supposed to do, all of these things. Somebody will say, yeah, that's a good brother.
Right.
Somebody will say, I got a good father.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
And more importantly, Rev, you'll say, I'm a good brother. That's the important thing. You'll feel differently about yourself if you start to measure yourself by the things that are really important, not by your bank balance, not by the kind of car that you drive. Measure yourself that's right. Like you said, how am I meeting my commitments?
Right. Okay,
how am I showing up for my kids? Those are the important things.
All right, and now as we go to wrap it up, for the brother listening who knows he needs this kind of help, what's the best way for him to reach you for coaching?
Well, first, just reach out. Don't wait until you feel like you got it together enough to ask for help. That's the important thing. The men who heal the fastest are the ones who refuse to do it alone. The easiest way to get to me is through my website, and that is everydayfinancecoach.com. everydayfinancecoach.com. You can book a free introductory call. You can connect. We'll look at your day zero honestly, no judgment, and map out some of your first steps. You can also reach me directly by email at david@everydayfinancecoach.com or grab time on my calendar by going to cal.com/davidmsamuel, and you can, book an appointment for a meeting or a call or a Zoom. And if it's easier, start right here in this community. The team at rootedinchristmen.org can connect you to me and to a room full of brothers walking the same road.
So his website, a free intro call, or through us at rootedinchristmen.org. No man on this show has to figure the money out by himself.
Not one. Reaching out isn't weakness, brother. It's the first strong move.
Hey, David, give the brothers still standing at day zero one picture of the other side.
Well, that's a great question. To me, it looks like an ordinary Tuesday, where money isn't the loudest voice in your head. An emergency comes, and they always do. You handle it without panic and without living in fear or denial. The financial system that you build can absorb shocks and still move you toward a future you actually choose. You can sit across from your kid and say, we're going to be okay. And this time, it's true. You're a man whose worth was never in the house he lost, with a future bigger than the years the locusts ate. That man isn't a fantasy. He's you on the other side of getting started. That's what it looks like.
All right.
Okay. All right, brothers, we love you, we see you, and we mean it. Until next time, stay rooted, rise strong. Divorce is not you.
This podcast is for educational and inspirational purposes only. The hosts and guests are not licensed professionals, and content is not legal, financial, or mental health advice. Seek qualified experts for personal guidance. Views expressed are those of the host and guests, not affiliated organization.